So I ended up just writing a couple of questions just to make it a little easier. So I feel like important to understanding how things could go wrong would be how a conventional system functions. So I guess what is a conventional system and how does it function?
So a conventional septic system basically has a septic tank where the sewage comes from your house and goes into the septic tank. And there, the solids separate the to the bottom of the tank. And then the fats, oil, and grease separate to the top of the water layer. The idea is to purify that sewage so that when it comes out of the tank and into the leach field, it has as few particles as possible. So there's a leach field for attached to your septic tank. There's a number of trenches that are underground that allow the effluent from the clarified effluent from the septic tank to percolate through the soil, and then as it moves through the soil for the water to be cleaned up, to remove particles, bacteria, some nutrients like phosphorus, viruses, etc.
Cool.
So basically, it's you have a septic tank and a leach field, drain field, soil treatment area. There's many names.
So how might an inefficient system pollute the environment? Kind of how do those processes result in our waterways being polluted?
All right. So if you, for example, if your leach field is clogged because there's too many particles because the effluent is not clarified in the septic tank, then wastewater will actually rise and will rise to the soil surface. So that's not good. That's one obvious way that we can, that a septic system that's not working properly can contaminate waterways. There's a couple of other ways. One is you're overloading the leach field. The water does not flow, the water flows too quickly through the soil, and in which case it doesn't have enough time to be, and so that ends up contaminating groundwater. Even in a conventional system that's working properly, nitrogen from the wastewater is going to end up in your groundwater because the systems are not designed to remove nitrogen. So that's another thing to think about. There's also, in addition to nitrate, there's any number of other chemicals that are used daily in a home that end up in your septic system that also, the system is not designed to remove them. And pharmaceuticals, for example, drugs, antibiotics, a number of personal care products, like scents from soaps, detergents, although most detergents are broken down. There's a number of things that are used daily that the system is not designed to remove and that will end up in the groundwater. So those are just some ways.
Do you have any suggestions for how people is there anything that we can put in our systems that would remove all of those things that are not broken down, or is it kind of just you need to not use them?
You just want to minimize their use because in a conventional system, there really isn't anything that you can do because they're just not. They're not meant for that. They're meant to remove, like I said, pathogens like bacteria and viruses, even larger pathogens like protozoa. They remove phosphate around here because the phosphorus reacts with the iron in the soil, but they don't remove nitrogen. They remove carbon. They're very good at that, and they keep the water underground away from people. But beyond that, they're not meant to do all these other things. And until not that long ago, we didn't really realize that all these pharmaceuticals, etc., were actually getting through the septic system and into groundwater.
What are other practices that homeowners can do to kind of mitigate those other issues and hopefully prolong the life of their septic system?
So one thing they can do is have their system inspected, every 1 to 3 years. Have somebody come and take a look and see if it needs pumping. The idea behind pumping is that the more space you have for the water to clarify, basically, the more time it has to clarify, the better. If we have a large layer of sludge, a very high layer of sludge, then that reduces the layer of water where you can get the clarification. You end up with more particles coming out of the system and more particles clogging your leach field. So one thing is to have them inspected and pumped regularly. A number of systems have a filter, an effluent filter. That can also help because that prevents particles from getting into the leach field. Using water efficient appliances, that lowers the amount of water that goes into the system, and that lowers the speed at which the water moves through the system, so the particles settle. That's a good thing. There's a number of other things like, don't put the when you clean your water softener, don't put that saline water from cleaning the water softener back into your septic system at all. That's terrible for it. But mainly it's trying to keep the water inputs, reasonable, and pumping, because that will prevent any physical malfunction, hydraulic malfunction in the leach field.
Great. Are there any specific things that people should not put in the system? I know my graduation party, we accidentally put some lamb grease in there and it just totally clogged the system. Are there any things that homeowners should be aware of that they might not think about that should definitely not go down their sink or in their toilet?
Yeah, so lamb grease.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Grease in general, especially, again, the system is really not meant for processing that. And depending, if the grease coagulates, it can block the pipes, etc. But things like bleach, you don't want to put down bleach, straight up bleach down your system. That kills the microorganisms that do the processing of the contaminants. So that's not good. Don't want to put, like actual things down, things that can clog the pipes. That's terrible. Sometimes people will dump like paint, like latex paint, water soluble paint. That's also not good. Really, those things should not be dumped down the drain. If you have old drugs that you were prescribed that have expired or what have you, don't dump them down the drain, because eventually they end up in your groundwater. If you have a septic system, they will end up in the groundwater. So dispose of them properly, and that dumping them down the drain in the toilet is not it.
That makes sense. So how, as a homeowner, would I know that my system needed to be pumped? Say I wasn't on a regular maintenance schedule, what might be some indicators that something's wrong?
Well, if it smells, it shouldn't smell, right? If it smells around the septic tank and the leach field, probably not a good sign. If you have backups of sewage into your house, also not a good sign. But really, you probably should not do any of this yourself. You should call a a professional that can look in your tank and tell you, yes, the sludge layer is too thick, or is fine, and you have a different problem. This is the kind of you want a professional to do. You don't want to go around handling the wastewater.
Yeah.
No, none of that. I mean, that stuff can have pathogens that are deadly.
Is it necessary to contact your wastewater management office when you do have a backup?
That would be a good thing. So if you have a local Department of Health or wastewater management office, again, you want to let them know.
Okay.
They want to be aware, but the person that's going to do the inspection will be a wastewater professional.
What are other best practice options, or are there any resources out there that homeowners should know about in terms of kind of learning more about their system, understanding their system?
URI Cooperative Extension has a lot of resources on their website. The New England On-Site Wastewater Training Program. You can go to their website, which is within URI's Cooperative Extension, and they have everything you'd want to know, from what are the best basics of septic systems, what kinds of septic systems are there, because there's conventional, there's advanced, different kinds of advanced, what to do, what not to do. So that's where I would go first. And then, I'm not certain, but I believe there's probably a list of certified and licensed professionals that would do the pumping and that sort of assessment of your system, probably under the DEM, under Rhode Island DEM website. That would be my guess.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
I can look that up and link that if it exists.
Yeah.
I know on the grant we focused a lot on updating substandard systems to more advanced systems. Kind of if I was a homeowner looking to update my system, or I'm redoing my house or new construction, what are some things that you would want me to know about the differences in the systems and what might be most suitable for the area?
So are you thinking I have a cesspool and now I need to upgrade?
Or even if I'm just, I need to update my conventional system, if you would suggest sticking with conventional, kind of what is the best option given the fact that we live on the coast?
So cesspools are terrible. You don't want one. And they're terrible for contaminating groundwater, and also eventually end up contaminating coastal waters. So, if you need to change your cesspool to a conventional system, there is a huge improvement in terms of your impact on coastal water quality. In the immediate coast, anything that can reduce the amount of nitrogen that goes into groundwater is great. So if you can upgrade to an advanced system, an advanced nitrogen removing system, they are more expensive, but you will lower your, say, nitrogen footprint considerably. Like I'm going to get probably put out 5 times less nitrogen with an advanced system than you would with a conventional system. They are expensive, but they are certainly a way to keep our groundwater safe, so lower nitrate levels in our groundwater, as well as lower the amount of nitrogen going to coastal waters, and less eutrophication, better enjoyment of your coastal waters, etc.
Are kind of the best practices very similar between the nitrogen reducing systems and a conventional system? Is it similar where you just want to reduce the amount of water flowing in, etc.?
Yes, the advanced systems do require, by according to the regulations, that they be inspected twice a year, and that you have a contract with a service provider that says that they will inspect your system twice a year for mechanical functioning, make sure all the components are in working order, etc., etc. So that's one additional requirement, if you will. Whereas if you have a septic system, ideally you would have it inspected, pumped, etc. But there's no regulation that I'm aware of that says you have to do that stuff.
Great. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's kind of all I have in terms of questions. Is there anything that you feel is pertinent to share that we didn't cover?
I mean, not really. Just one thing to be aware of is that in neighboring states like Massachusetts, for example, where they use the same advanced systems, and they're concerned about nitrogen pollution, especially in state. In addition to having the advanced systems, they require that the homeowner check whether the system is actually lowering the nitrogen level of the wastewater to the regulatory amount. And that works pretty well for them. And that's perhaps something that, Rhode Island could start thinking about, because you put in your $25,000 or $30,000 advanced system, and you kind of go, well, it should be working fine. And in fact, we found that some of the systems are not working properly all the time. Mostly they are. But, if you pay $30,000 for the thing, you probably want to know that it works. Mm-hmm. Just like if you pay a lot of money for a car, you want to make sure that it runs. Those are all the things it's supposed to. So that's just something.